I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I haven't really made a dedicated video about this, and I just felt like talking about this. The franchise that brought us 3 separate series, or rather 3 separate titles. We have here one of them, Xenosaga. This is the complete in box of Xenosaga 3. I have Xenosaga 1 and 2 as well, but they're not complete in box. I didn't feel like showing those off. And, of course, Xenogears, which I have digitally. And then there's also Xenoblade Chronicles. All of them are part of the same brilliant mind that is Tetsuya Takahashi. Tetsuya Takahashi was once an employee at Squaresoft, alongside his wife, who I believe her name she goes as when working at the company was Xenosaga. I think that was it. But she was they believe she was known for romancing Saga, which I don't know if her name Saga was intentional or not. But she was part of that. She's a big part of this, though. She was a big part of Xenogears. Tetsuya Takahashi was a designer on games such as Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, 2 big proponents that went towards Xenogears. Takahashi designed the Magitech armor and a lot of that other science fiction-y stuff, and he pulled that into this. And the big creative head at the time, Hironobu Sakaguchi, he saw the ambition in Tetsuya Takahashi's eyes. He saw it, and he must have respected the man a great deal, so he gave him a budget to make his own title. And at first it was going to be a sequel to Chrono Trigger. But then it eventually became a completely different thing, even though they brought a lot of the people who worked on Chrono Trigger on board for Xenogears, such as the soundtrack guy. The guy who made the soundtrack, his name being Yasunori Misura. He did the soundtrack for Chrono Trigger and for Xenogears, and in both of those soundtracks, his story is painful, tortured. He was very much like that tortured composer who created masterpieces while he was in poor health, such as Friedrich Chopin, Beethoven. They created very amazing masterpieces while being tortured mentally, physically. They were in poor health, but it somehow managed to bring out the best of them. They brought out the best of their music, in such a way that we are continuing to listen to Xenogears music, to Chrono Trigger music, decades later, and they're still so emotionally powerful pieces of music that people who have played these games, when they listen to this music, they can't help but feel emotional. They can't help but tear up at times. And that's certainly the case for me, especially with Chrono Trigger's music. There's the ending theme for both of those games, which is so beautifully made. There's just fantastic mastercrafts, and it's just a shame that Yasunori put himself through such poor health to create these soundtracks, but I applaud the man heavily. I respect the heck out of him. I respect the heck out of Tetsuya Takahashi as well. He created such a fantastic series, and unfortunately, these 3 series, Xenogears, Xenosaga, and Xenoblade, are all owned by 3 different companies for some strange reason. I doubt Xenogears is ever going to leave Square Enix's IP vault of ownership, and I doubt, well, it may be likely that Bandai Namco, Bamco, would eventually give Xenosaga to Monolith Soft, or more likely Nintendo, because Nintendo could buy Xenosaga from Bamco. Nintendo's huge. They could even buy Bamco, I bet, but they're probably not going to. But they could probably negotiate for Xenosaga if there was a demand for it. And, of course, the Xenoblade Chronicles series is a very big juggernaut. It's a very big, popular series. I doubt I'll ever play them because they're on consoles that I've never owned and probably will never own. Unless they could put Xenoblade 1, 2, and X onto the Switch, in which case then I'll play them there. I will not play them on the Wii, the Wii U, or any of that crap. I'm never going to get those. But if they bring them over to one thing and you can play all of them on a single console, that will probably be where I eventually get around to playing them, if I ever do. I know little about Xenoblade because I've never owned Nintendo home consoles. I've had the handhelds, the Game Boy, the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy Color. I've had those. I've never played the DS, and I've never played the Nintendo 64. I never owned it. I played that, but I've never played the GameCube. I've never played the Wii, the Wii U, Switch. I've never owned any of that, and I've never really had much of an interest in Nintendo home consoles. Their libraries just never really spoke to me until the Switch came around. When the Switch came around, it had huge third-party support. Huge. The unfortunate thing is that most of the third-party support that was coming out for the Switch was also coming out for the PS4, so I was like, maybe I'll just get the PS4 instead. The only thing that really spoke to me on the Switch that was only on the Switch would probably be Xenoblade 3. And maybe Octopath Traveler. That was a very fantastic little nostalgic sprite work type of game that I really want to take a look at someday. But eventually, maybe. But Xenosaga was the next step after Xenogears. After Takahashi left Squaresoft at the time, because they were not letting him do his ambitions as proudly as he wanted. You could definitely tell with the second disc of Xenogears, it's unfinished. It needs extra time. It needed double the budget. If you doubled the budget, maybe they would have been able to complete the second disc on time. Doubled the budget and give them an extra year to work on it, and they'd probably have made a fantastic little game that would have made a lot more money for the company. This is just an example of what happens when you have little faith in something and you don't give this company with one of the most ambitious, creatively sound and imaginative people and his imaginative teams the chance to develop a mastercraft capable of potentially rivaling Final Fantasy. And the best part is that this isn't a rival company making a rival IP. It's your company. You're making a rival to Final Fantasy, but it's your IP. You own it. You could have had two juggernauts of an IP that people will be competing over which one to get, Final Fantasy or Xenogears, and regardless of which one they buy, you're making the bank on both sides. It's a no-brainer. But they did not give Tetsuya Takahashi and his team the credit or the time or the budget that they deserved. This game was fantastic. I can't begin to describe how good Xenogears is, how important Xenogears is to science fiction as a genre, to science fiction as an art form, to storytelling. It is very important in the video game space, and it will probably continue to be important, and more important even as time goes on. It obviously pulls a lot from science fiction films and movies such as 2001: A Space Odyssey, Soylent Green, Star Trek, and a bunch of other things besides. It pulls a lot from a lot of places, from a lot of different places, and then puts all of those creative ideas, Gundam as well also, and they put all of that into a single location. And it's all about how you execute that location, how you execute that story. Right away when you play Xenogears, you are bombarded by terms and world building that you're not familiar with. So, if you're not a fan of this genre, of this type of storytelling, you're going to be lost for quite a while, and you may not really appreciate the creativity and the minds that were going into this series at the time. It wouldn't be until Xenosaga, when Takahashi was partnering with Bamco to make those 3 games. He was going to make 6 games with Bamco, but by the 3rd game, Bamco was like, alright, we're done with this. Finish your game, we're done. And Takahashi, once again, was left with his ambitions sky high, but a company that did not have that much faith. in his IP. It's very disappointing. That's why the third one is also rushed. But it wouldn't be until the first Xenosaga title that we would have a thing called the data log, or that I call it the data log. Encyclopedia, basically. A wiki, basically. Where you can press the start menu or triangle menu, as JRPGs were on at the time on the PS1 and PS2. You press triangle button to open the menu. Yeah, basically on that menu, you would have the option to enter your encyclopedia. And there were hundreds of entries of various terms, terminologies, locations. It's a bestiary. It's a world map. It's an assortment of all sorts of things. Any type of key term that you may not recognize will have an entry in this encyclopedia for you to go to and consult and read on the lore and the world that they have built here, because they didn't have enough time or a chance to really explain everything to you in the way that they really wanted to. There's a lot of stuff going on here as well, such as Blade Runner type of shtick with Realians and the politics behind Realians versus humans. There's a lot of Blade Runner stuff going on with that one. There's just so much politicking and ethics and philosophy and psychology going on at the seams here. You can tell that this has Nietzsche written all over it. All three titles of the Xenosaga series has a little adage here in German here, also sprach Zarathustra, and that's the title of a book by Nietzsche. He wrote a book called also sprach Zarathustra. And I haven't read all three of those books, obviously, but I know they exist. I know the gists of what they exist. The eternal recurrence, basically, is a big one here. And the eternal recurrence is also talked about in Xenogears. It's a big part of Xenogears. And the easiest way I could explain this without spoiling too much would probably be to combine the philosophical concept with science fiction in a separate setting. So let's say you have this big AI that is observing a society, and the society grows to a certain point, and at this certain point they become scientifically advanced. But if they get any further advanced, they're going to realize that an AI is running their world, and they may turn against the AI. And so the AI decides to wipe out this society. They'll leave humans alive, but they'll wipe out all the technology, all knowledge of the technology, and humans will have to start over. This society will have to start over again. And then they'll go back, eventually the cycle repeats itself, they go back to where they were technologically, but the AI says, once again, if you get any further technologically advanced, you will realize that we are an AI and we're running your world, and you're probably going to turn against us, or we're going to wipe you out again. And then they keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. It's an eternal cycle. And the key, the goal, was to break the cycle. Turn against the AI before the AI wipes out all of humanity. You wipe out the AI, you wipe out the Overlord, and eventually humanity is freed from the eternal recurrence so that they could continue to manifest their own destiny, basically. And that's the shtick with Xenogears, is the shtick with Xenosaga. I have no idea if it's the shtick with Xenoblade. I haven't played those games. I have intentionally left myself in the dark on that series. I may eventually go in to look up the stories about that, but I want to leave myself in the dark for now, in case I ever plan to play them. The story for these games is fascinating to me. It's fascinating on such a cerebral level. The music for the Xenosaga games isn't as interesting as the Xenogears game was, probably because they're lacking Yasuroi Mitsuda, and they really need him to really bring out the heart and emotions. But there's some great tracks in the Xenosaga series as well. In the first Xenosaga game, there is a cutscene that's pretty popular. It's memed with Albedo. You'll probably find it very easily if you just go to YouTube and type in Albedo censorship scene. You'll just type that in and it'll pop it up. It'll show Xenosaga Albedo censorship scene. because there was censorship going on with this character. This character, Albedo, is one of my favorite characters in fiction. He is quite insane, yes, but he's also physically immortal, and he likes to show this off. In this one cutscene, he removes his own head, and there's two different ways in which he does this, and it's censored depending upon the Japanese version or the North American version. In the North American version, he basically grabs his head with his hands and just rips his head off and drops it on the ground. And the head's still talking. He's completely alive. He's completely fine. And the head's still talking to you, and it was a fantastic little scene. In the Japanese version, he actually pulls out a knife and cuts his head off with his knife. It's still the same thing. He's completely fine, and his head's still talking to you when it's on the ground and all that stuff. And then he stomps on the head. He just stomps it, crushes it, gooey, splash, and everybody's like, "Oh no, did he wipe himself out?" No, his head just pops back onto his neck. He's perfectly fine. He's such a wonderful character. I definitely recommend anybody who's a fan of science fiction, who's a fan of storytelling, to check out both Xenogears and Xenosaga 1. You don't have to play all three Xenosaga games, just the first one. If the first one doesn't rope you into wanting to find out about the second one, fine. But you got to check out that first title. It is fantastic. These are fantastic science fiction stories that combine cerebral thinking elements into them. They bring in certain worldviews, certain psychological concepts, certain philosophical concepts that make you think about the world years and years after you've played it. Very existential thoughts such as, who are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? It tackles these things in a very cerebral science fiction manner that I was very, very appreciative and very engrossed in. I played Xenosaga first before I played Xenogears. But when I got to Xenogears, I could honestly say that this one was the most ambitious of the three series that Tetsuya Takahashi worked on. And you could probably think or tell that he may have dumbed down his storytelling for Xenoblade in order to maximize marketability so that they could sell more copies and keep Nintendo overlords happy. And he sacrificed creative power there so that he could keep making his games. Because when you see that when he tries to get more cerebral, more very technical, that's when the companies go like, well, I don't know if we could do this, I don't know if this is going to work, and they lose faith in your IP, they lose faith in your project, and then it just turns into a Treasure Planet debacle. Disney and Treasure Planet. Treasure Planet was one of the best 2D movies, version of 2D and 3D animation that was ever made in the 2000s. One of the best 2D films of the 2000s that Disney ever made. And they completely lost faith in the project. They barely marketed it, and it didn't do well because Disney wanted it to fail. They didn't want to do 2D films anymore. They wanted to move over to simple, easy, cheap things, because 2D animation takes skill, it takes time, it takes effort to really bring out a 2D animated project that will rope audiences in, both in a good story that's being told, but also amazing animation. And that's kind of like how it is here. This is a fantastic mastercraft of both storytelling and game design, although admittedly Xenosaga 2 isn't the best one, but it certainly is innovative. It tried to do something different that I hadn't seen most games doing at the time, or since, so it was certainly trying to innovate itself and be different at the same time, and I can appreciate that. The Xenosaga and Xenogears games are fantastic. I definitely would say that if the easiest one you'll be able to get your hands on is probably going to be Xenogears, though. Square Enix is still offering that. I don't know if it's on Steam or on the PS4 or PS5 stores, but it's most assuredly on the PS1 store for the PS3. In the North America territory. I don't know about the PAL territory or Japan territory. You'll have to figure that out on your own. But if you're in North America or Canada, basically, if you still own your PlayStation 3 and you want to play Xenogears the legal way, and it's not offered on the PS4 or 5 or Steam or anything, if it's not. If it is, then go play it there. But if it's not, you can get it on the PS3. All you gotta do is boot your PS3 up, check the PS Store. All you gotta do is go to the search bar. You have to go to the search bar. You can't just go under the menu and click games and PS1 titles. It's not gonna be found there. You have to go to the search bar, which is very easy to find. You just press the triangle button, then you press the right button a couple times. You'll find the search bar. Click that, open that up, and then type in Xenogears, and it'll pop up, and you can get it. I believe it's like $5 or $6.99 or $9.99 at the most. No PS1 title is ever more than $9.99, and very few titles are. Most of them are $5 to $6.99, and that's a very great price for a PS1 classic. For JRPGs especially, if you're trying to tackle grabbing yourself a hard copy of many of these games, you're going to be shilling out hundreds of dollars. Most of these titles on the PS1 store for the PSN, PS3's PSN, are rare. There's Silent Hill 1 on there. There's Suikoden 1 and 2 on there. There's Wild Arms 1 and 2. Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, Chrono Cross. So many fantastic games. Legend of Dragoon, Breath of Fire 4. Lots of titles are on there, man. You gotta go take a look at that. You gotta go grab that before it's gone. Because if you're just there to play the game legally, then that's the way to do it. That's one of the ways to do it at any rate. But yeah, I'm a little bit going off topic here, so I'm gonna come back and talk about these every now and again. Just bring it up from a different angle. Maybe talk about some science fiction concept like Realians. I really want to talk about Realians eventually, but this is getting a little bit long. I just wanted to come in and talk about this a little bit more. Definitely play Xenogears. Play Xenogears. Play Xenosaga 1. Please play it. Find it. Or even just go to YouTube and type in Xenosaga movie version. Or just do that. It'll show you the cutscenes. All of the cutscenes are all voiced from Xenosaga 1. And you'll be able to get the story that way. And it's perfectly digestible, perfectly sufficeable that way. Bamco isn't re-releasing these games. I don't know why they're letting this franchise die. They really should re-release all 3 games in a trilogy for the PS5. They really should do that, Bamco. Come on. I'm giving you free marketing advice. Do this.